In the stillness of the deep night, when the world seems to pause and all the daily hustle fades away, allow yourself to slowly release all the fatigue and tension that may linger in your body and mind. Imagine a quiet room, softly lit by a flickering candle, casting gentle shadows dancing on ancient stone walls, creating a peaceful and mysterious atmosphere. As you sit or lie down comfortably, feel the cool night air touching your skin, gently caressing every strand of hair, inviting your soul to rest and dissolve into profound silence. Here in this halted space and time, we will begin a journey unlike any other in adventure, inviting you to explore the dark layers of history. Filled with secrets, wandering through medieval corridors, hidden behind fog and whispers of the night wind. The story we are about to explore is not just an ordinary history tale, but a narrative that touches the realms between reality and imagination, between the known and the unknown, a mystery that stretches beyond logic and invites you to open your mind and calm your heart. There is no need to rush or feel the pressure to understand everything. Just let this gentle voice guide you slowly, like a flowing river carrying every breath and rustle of wind into a space of peace. For the moments ahead, I invite you to close your eyes briefly if you wish. Feel your body lighten and your thoughts drift, allowing yourself to be carried into a story that might sound strange, yet full of beauty and depth rarely found in everyday life. With every passing second, let yourself sink deeper into this atmosphere where the shadows of the past meet the light of the present, creating harmony between calmness and a subtle curiosity. Before we truly enter this story, it's good to take a deep breath together. Feel the fresh air fill your lungs and slowly exhale, clearing all burdens and noise from your mind. Slowly let silence and tranquility fill every corner of your soul, opening space for mystery to arrive gently and without pressure. This is your time to forget all distractions and let yourself immerse in the flow of a story that will take you deep into hidden historical corridors, filled with symbols and meanings that can only be felt through stillness and patience. In this calmness, I also invite you to imagine we are sitting together in a small, warm room, surrounded by old books and ancient artifacts where the night wind whispers through the window, cracks bringing soft scents of dry leaves and wet earth. Here we begin to open the pages of a long-forgotten tale, letting each word carry you deeper into an eternal mystery, a story that, despite its darkness and riddles, holds a soothing beauty and arouses curiosity. There is nothing you need to do but listen, allowing each sentence to slowly seep into your mind and heart, building a comfortable and peaceful atmosphere that can help you rest or even fall asleep if your body is tired. In this narration, we do not chase speed or definite conclusions, but invite you to enjoy a slow and meaningful journey where every second becomes a moment to get to know a different world untouched by time. With this opening, I invite you to together open the door to the mysterious Templar sword, a sword that shines but whose reflection is always empty, an object that raises more questions than answers and stands as a silent witness to the human journey filled with hope, fear, and secrets never fully revealed. Let us begin with a calm heart and open mind, letting ourselves drift through the dark corridors of the medieval age with all its hidden beauty and horrors. Let this voice be your companion tonight. gently guiding you through a story that is both soothing and curiosity-provoking, so you can feel comfortable and peaceful every step of the way. After you feel the calmness creeping into every corner of your soul and body, let us step deeper together into a world hidden behind the roar of unwritten history. A story not always recorded in official books, but still alive in whispers of the wind and shadows of ancient ruins. Imagine we are standing on an old fortress perched firmly atop a silent hill. Surrounded by dense forest, barely touched by sunlight, where morning fog hangs low and blurs the line between reality and legend. This fortress, once the center of power and secrets of the Templar Knights, holds a mystery that has sparked curiosity and fear for centuries. The year is 1307, a time when the world was still wrapped in the darkness of politics, and endless religious conflicts, and every shadow could become a silent witness to betrayal and sacrifice. Amidst this tension, a Templar sword emerged. Not just as an ordinary weapon, but an artifact believed to possess supernatural power capable of changing the fate of whoever wielded it. People around the fortress believed that the sword was more than just gleaming metal, but an artifact connected to another world, a realm where lost and cursed souls whisper in silence. The sword was said to have a strange reflection, never showing the holder's face, as if hiding the deepest secrets forbidden to ordinary humans. Imagine for a moment how it would feel to grasp an object that always refuses to reflect your own image, seemingly holding an empty shadow that calls you to endlessly question and ponder. As time passed, the sword became both a symbol and a mystery, attracting researchers and artifact hunters eager to uncover its secrets. Yet, no one ever succeeded in understanding the truth behind that empty reflection. Some said the sword was cursed by dark powers beyond human reason, while others believed it was a bridge between the living and the dead, holding messages only understandable by souls truly ready to face their own inner darkness. In the cold, historic silence of the fortress, imagine also the daily life of the Templar Knights guarding the sword, living routines full of discipline and devotion. Under the shadow of a mystery lurking in every corner, they stood as keepers of faith and secrets, confronting fears and unspoken dilemmas, and holding hope that one day the sword would reveal the truth hidden behind its dazzling yet enigmatic light. As we let ourselves sink into this blending of imagination and history, let curiosity slowly grow and merge with the enveloping calmness, creating an atmosphere fitting to start a long journey into a story that will invite you to delve deeper into the timeless secrets of the medieval age. Now we step into the year 1307, precisely when the Templar Knights reached the peak of their glory, while also beginning to feel the waves of change shaking the foundations of their power. The old fortress where the sword was kept stood in a remote area in Western Europe, surrounded by dense forests and steep valleys that seemed to hold dark secrets from a long-gone era. At that time, tensions between the church and the kingdom escalated, triggering countless conspiracies and betrayals. The Templar Knights were known not only as brave warriors, but also as keepers of secrets and symbols of strong faith. They conducted hidden rituals and guarded ancient legacies believed capable of altering the course of history. Yet behind their strength and resilience, there was also vulnerability and unspoken fear. The sword that never reflected its holder's face became a symbol of this ambiguity. An object holding power and curse beyond the reach of ordinary human thought. The fortress location itself witnessed many mysterious events hard to explain. Nights were often colored by whispers of the wind resembling forgotten prayers, and shadows moved without clear shapes. Nearby villagers often avoided the area after sunset, believing dark forces lurked ready to consume anyone daring to come too close. The political and social conditions of the time worsened the ominous atmosphere around the fortress. Conflicts between nobles and the church created uncertainty and fear. Amidst this darkness, the Templar sword, with its empty reflection, became not only a historical mystery, but also a warning about the dangers lurking behind faith and power. With this enigmatic backdrop, the story of the sword is not just about shining metal, but also about the people who held it, about fear, sacrifice, and secrets kept silently. As we imagine this world, we are invited to delve into layers of untouchable stories and question what truly hides behind the sword's empty mirror. Delving deeper into the year 1307, imagine the atmosphere inside the fortress as night falls. A cold wind blows through cracks in the stone walls, carrying the damp scent of earth and silently falling leaves. Inside, the dim torchlight dances on the walls, casting slowly revolving shadows that seem alive, adding a mystical and tense mood. The knights on watch whisper softly, conveying information and orders in low tones, so as not to disturb the tension that envelops the entire building. They know the sword is not merely an object, but a silent witness to dark events and secrets that must not be revealed. Every passing second is filled with silence, fear, and hope, as if waiting for the unexpected to happen. Among their daily activities, the ritual of guarding the sword is the most sacred and tense moment. The sword is kept in an old wooden chest lined with black iron, only accessible by a specially chosen head knight. The opening ceremony is done carefully, accompanied by prayers in an ancient language, as if begging protection from the dark power possibly contained within the sword. Inside the storage room, the air feels heavy and cold, as if carrying an inexplicable energy. The sounds of clashing metal and the sigh of the wind outside add to a deep sense of isolation. Every knight who ever touched the sword reported strange experiences, ranging from feelings of losing oneself to faint shadows silently following them. Yet, these stories remain tightly sealed out of fear of curses and retribution. When the sword is lifted, its surface gleams, but the expected reflection never appears. Empty, a mirror without a shadow. This phenomenon perplexed many, including priests and sorcerers trying to interpret it. Some say it signifies that the sword holds power from another dimension, where the human soul cannot penetrate the boundary between the real world and the supernatural. Daily life in the fortress was not just about war and guarding, but also about life wrapped in tension between faith and doubt. The knights lived their days with respect and fear, aware that the sword was not just a weapon, but also a symbol of power and unsolved darkness. Though set in the 14th century, this story feels close if we allow our imagination to roam freely. It invites us to feel the same tension, fear, hate, and curiosity as those who lived in the shadow of the sword that never reflected its holder's face. The year 1307 brought major changes in the history of the Templar Knights. Amid political chaos and betrayal, they began facing heavy pressure from various sides. King Philippe IV of France, feeling threatened by the power and wealth of the Templar Order, decided to end their era of glory with accusations of heresy and treason. These accusations were not only political attacks, but also efforts to erase traces of power considered disruptive to the balance of power. The fortress's remote location offered temporary protection, but over time, waves of oppression spread there as well. On dark, starless nights, whispers from beyond the walls brought bad news. The knights had to face a difficult choice between loyalty to their oath or surrender to increasing pressure. Inside those walls, the atmosphere grew tenser. As rumors of arrests and trials spread, the knights exerted every effort to protect their secrets, including the sword that did not reflect faces. They knew that if the object fell into the wrong hands, not only their honor would be lost, but also the safety of the souls involved. Their days were filled with fear and vigilance, with activities that seemed ordinary but were laden with hidden meaning. Every step, every word, and every movement was carefully guarded to prevent enemies from infiltrating. Ancient rituals were performed in silence, strengthening bonds and protecting against invisible threats. The story of 1307 became a turning point not only for the Templar Knights, but also for the dark history surrounding that sword. The mystery of the sword that never reflected its holder's face became a symbol of a time full of secrets and tragedy, still echoing today. Entering the core of the story, we shift to the daily life of the Templar Knights, who guarded this mysterious sword. Imagine a cold morning with thin mist covering the old fortress. The knights rise from their simple wooden beds, donning armor that gleams dimly under the sunlight, filtering through stone window cracks. The sound of clashing metal fills the air, signaling a routine that had been carried out for centuries. Their morning activities were not only about preparing for battle, but also about preserving the sanctity and power of sacred objects they held holy, especially the sword, in a special dark and cold chamber. The sword was placed on a stone altar carved with ancient symbols that were hard to comprehend. Cleaning and purification rituals were performed carefully, using holy water and herbs brought from distant lands. As the day progressed, the knights continued training, prayer, and guarding. Yet beneath the busyness, a lingering tension persisted. They knew the sword was not merely a symbol of power, but also a symbol of an attached curse. Stories about those who tried to see their reflection in the sword and then vanished or met ill fate circulated secretly among them. The description of the sword itself was detailed. Its blade, made of the finest steel, shone with a silver hue. Yet its surface seemed to refuse, reflecting any image. The hilt was adorned with gold and precious stones, engraved with crosses and motifs never fully understood. The coldness from the sword could be felt by anyone nearby, as if it held energy from another world lurking beneath its surface. The knight's observation of the sword was not only physical, but also spiritual. They believed the sword had its own consciousness, and that it chose who was worthy to hold it. However, the sword's inability to reflect its holder's face remained a mystery that inspired both fear and awe. Daily life in the fortress was a blend of ritual, military discipline, and fear of something greater than themselves. They lived quietly, yet cautiously, allowing every detail to be part of a larger story only felt by those truly close to the sword. In this tension-filled daily life, there were small rituals that became the lifeblood of the knights. Every morning after the sword purification ritual, they gathered in the main hall to chant prayers believed to calm the dark spirits possibly trapped within the iron blade. The slow and devout chanting added to the silence and thick, mysterious atmosphere. The knights guarding the sword also underwent physical and mental training with high discipline. This training was not only to keep them ready against enemy attacks, but also to strengthen their spiritual bond with the sword that symbolized them. They believed that the stronger the bond, the greater the chance the sword would choose them as a worthy holder. Beyond rituals and training, the fortress became a place where stories about the sword's curse circulated with great caution. Some young knights who had just joined often heard whispers about unseen shadows, faint voices, and strange feelings difficult to explain when near the sword. Though never officially acknowledged, these stories remained part of an unwritten heritage passed down through generations. There was also a legend about the sword choosing its own owner. This tale described how the sword seemed alive, possessing will and power beyond human comprehension. Some said the sword was both an embodiment of a sacred vow and a curse, binding anyone who held it to an unavoidable fate. Such beliefs caused deep tension among the knights. They knew the sword was not just an inanimate object, but something full of mystery and power they could not fully understand. As time passed, dark stories about the sword increasingly enveloped the fortress, making the atmosphere even gloomier and full of riddles. With all these stories and rituals, life in the fortress became a small, isolated world where reality and myth blended into one. They lived in the shadow of the sword that did not reflect its holder's face, a symbol of secrets and an unsolved curse. One of the most important daily activities for the knights was to keep the sword protected from unauthorized eyes. The sword was stored in a secret chamber, guarded strictly, accessible only to a few chosen individuals holding keys made of pure iron and adorned with Templar symbols. The door itself was made of thick oak, reinforced with forged iron and inscribed with protective Latin spells long forgotten. Every day before sunset, a special knight performed the final ritual to seal the chamber. He recited a locking prayer, accompanied by incense smoke flowing gently to every corner of the room. The scent of the incense was believed to preserve positive energy and repel evil influences that might try to approach the sword. The room where the sword was kept was no ordinary room. Its walls were covered with ancient paintings depicting tales from the Crusades, sacred struggles, and the sacrifices of the knights. The paintings seemed alive in the darkness, radiating a strong and mysterious aura. Dim oil lamps added to the mystical atmosphere, making the room feel like a place where time stood still. The sword itself rested on a dark red velvet cushion. The cushion was placed atop a black wooden table carved with secret symbols. No one dared to touch the sword without permission, as it was believed that even the slightest disturbance could trigger the curse long haunting the object. Hidden records stated that this sword had silently witnessed many decisive battles. Every scratch and mark on its blade held stories, wounds not only physical but spiritual. Yet, the greatest mystery remained in the empty reflection it produced, as if the sword refused to acknowledge anyone as its owner. The existence of this secret chamber reinforced the mysterious aura surrounding the sword. It became a symbol of something beyond a mere weapon, an object binding fate, secrets, and powers that could not be explained with ordinary words. The knights carried out their duty with full respect and fear, aware they guarded a great mystery that must not be casually revealed. Amid the knight's life filled with rituals and vigilance, there were also tales whispered behind the fortress walls. These stories were not only about the sword that never reflected faces, but also about spirits said to inhabit the place. Some knights said that on certain nights, when cold winds blew through the narrow corridors, faint whispers could be heard as if coming from a forgotten past. The whispers were never clear, just fragments of words filled with sorrow and anger, causing anyone who heard them to feel a chilling shiver deep into their bones. Some believed these voices were traces of souls who once fought and died in battles involving the sword. Souls never truly at peace, endlessly bound to the curse attached to the iron blade. More than mere stories, these mystical experiences made the knights more cautious. They always ensured no one walked alone in the dark halls, and every step was accompanied by prayers and protection. Some even carried protective symbols like crosses or amulets, believed to dampen the spirit's influence. Within this tension was also a deep curiosity. The bravest knights sometimes tried to communicate with the voices, hoping to find answers or explanations that could free them from fear and the curse. Yet, such attempts almost always ended in failure, with some suffering mental or physical disturbances forcing them to abandon their duties. These tales circulated discreetly among the fortress guards, balancing belief and fear surrounding their lives. No one truly knew where the whispers came from or what the spirit's true purpose was. This mystery added another layer to the story of the sword that never reflected faces, a secret growing deeper and harder to uncover. Over time, the voices became part of the fortress's and knights' identity. They lived alongside shadows of the past, constantly reminding them that the sword was not just a weapon of war, but a keeper of secrets demanding a high price from anyone daring to come too close. Even on bright days, the atmosphere around the fortress always held something that could not be described in words. A thin mist often shrouded the hilltop where the fortress stood, as if wrapping it in an unbroken cloak of mystery. This mist gave the impression that the fortress lived in a world between reality and shadow, a space where time and place seemed displaced. Villagers at the hill's foot often recounted strange experiences when they saw the fortress from afar. Sometimes faint lights appeared to glow behind the stone walls, but no one could confirm their source. They also told stories of vague shadows moving behind tightly shut windows, shadows never clearly visible, but always present. The shifting weather and natural conditions seemed aligned with the tension surrounding the fortress. Sudden, cold winds carried rustling sounds resembling whispers, making anyone who heard them feel as though they were being watched. At night, strange noises like soft knocks or footsteps with unclear origins added to the impression that the fortress was alive with secrets unwilling to be revealed. Even the most experienced guards dared not explore every corner of the place without company. They believed certain parts of the fortress were forbidden, where supernatural forces still dwelled and could affect the mind and body of anyone who dared approach. Thus, many hidden rooms and corridors were left untouched, silent witnesses to a past full of riddles. The fortress's uniqueness was also evident in its unusual architecture. Some parts appeared added asymmetrically, with large stones carved with symbolic patterns. Some experts believed these patterns served more than decorative purposes, perhaps as protective talismans or secret codes only understood by the knights and priests of the era. All these elements made the fortress both a center of attraction and a source of fear. It was not merely a defensive structure, but a living monument holding stories and mysteries that echoed continuously between its walls. A place inviting anyone who approached to ask questions and try to understand something that might never be fully answered. Amid the silence and shadows enveloping the ancient fortress, the knights' lives moved in a steady rhythm, yet filled with tension. Every morning, they began their day with a collective prayer in the small chapel located within the fortress. The chapel was simple, yet adorned with sacred symbols decorating its walls. The flickering candlelight danced upon the stone surfaces, creating an atmosphere both calm and reverent. The morning prayer was more than ritual, it was a reminder of the sacred duty they bore, guarding the sword that never reflected a face and all the secrets it carried. After prayer, the knights engaged in physical and weapons training on the dusty courtyard. The clashing sound of swords and training shouts filled the air, yet beneath it lay a strange tranquility. This activity was not only to maintain agility, but also to contain the fear and anxiety hidden within their hearts. Every movement was filled with awareness of the power and danger the sword held. They knew the sword was not merely a weapon, but a key to a mystery far deeper than they could comprehend. Between training sessions, knights often gathered in the cold, dark meeting room. There, they discussed many things from battle strategies to old stories circulating about the sword. Yet their conversations were always tinged with heavy silence, as if some truths must not be openly revealed. Some had tried to delve deeper into the sword's secrets, but ended up with inexplicable unrest. Daily activities were marked by strict surveillance over who could approach the sword. Only the highest-ranking knights were allowed into the secret chamber, and even they often felt watched in every move. There were tales of knights who, after staring too long at the sword, began losing their sense of self, as if the blade pulled their souls into endless darkness. Not only the sword, but other objects in the fortress also held mysteries. An ancient chalice stored in a chamber was said to reveal the deepest secrets of whoever held it. However, it was also linked to a curse that made many fearful to touch it. Whispering voices purportedly emitted from the chalice at night became one reason why it was kept hidden and guarded so tightly. The fortress guards also paid close attention to a scroll buried beneath the chapel's altar. This scroll contained ancient rituals believed to summon cursed spirits. no one dared to open it carelessly, for every verse supposedly held the power to bind souls long trapped in shadows of history. Only the highest priests were allowed to read and safeguard the scroll, maintaining balance between the real world and the supernatural. When night fell, the fortress transformed into a place of silence and mystery. Dim oil lamps lit long, winding corridors, casting dancing shadows upon the stone walls. The wind passing through cracks carried indistinct whispers, enhancing a magical aura beyond ordinary explanation. Knights often sat in the main hall, sharing stories and attentively listening to every sound from the darkness. Sometimes, those sounds became clear enough to almost understand. Yet the messages were always vague and cryptic, ensnaring listeners deeper into a circle of mystery. Some knights believed these voices were warnings from the past or communications from another realm trying to provide clues about the sword's destiny and the secrets it concealed. The awareness of unseen presences made the fortress's inhabitants always vigilant, but also brought them into an unusual calm, as if tension and fear had become part of their daily existence, giving new meaning to every action and decision. Amid this uncertainty, they remained dedicated to their duties, ensuring the secrets and power within the sword never fell into wrong hands. Over time, stories of this sword and the fortress housing it became legends spreading far beyond their borders. Many sought the truth behind the tales, but few could grasp the depth of the real mystery. The sword that never reflected its owner's face remained a symbol of a great secret that might never be fully unveiled. In the stillness of night, when the world seemed silent and all sounds faded, the sword stayed in its secret chamber, waiting for its true owner, or perhaps only bearing silent witness to an unfinished history. And there, behind all shadows and whispers, the mystery lived on, wrapping the fortress and its inhabitants in an eternal veil of riddles. Behind the thick fortress walls, life moved in a routine full of silence, but never truly quiet. The sound of footsteps in the long stone corridors echoed like a whisper from a past that never fully faded. In every corner, faint shadows lurked, seemingly waiting for the right moment to reveal secrets hidden for centuries. In that silence, the presence of the sword that never reflected the holder's face kept disturbing the mind, creating an atmosphere difficult to explain, yet deeply felt. The knights guarding the sword led lives filled with discipline and sacrifice. They knew the sword was not only a symbol of power, but also a heavy burden to bear. Every day they faced an inner battle between duty and fear of the power they protected. Yet, in the quiet and solitude, there was a profound respect for the shining sword, even though its reflection was always empty. In the fortress's basement lay a secret chamber known only to a few. There, the sword rested inside a wooden chest made of old oak, reinforced with rusted yet sturdy iron. Surrounding the chest were candles burning dimly, casting a soft and warm light. The scent of wax and aged wood mixed with the cold metallic aroma from the sword, creating a mystical and somewhat eerie atmosphere. That chamber also held ancient books containing records of the sword's history, rituals once performed, and its previous owners. These records were written with ink that seemed never to fade, despite being centuries old. There was something mysterious about that ink, perhaps like the sword that never reflected a face, refused to vanish with time. Every page held stories full of riddles and mysteries, making anyone who read feel drawn into another world filled with shadows and secrets. Tales told of knights who vanished without a trace after trying to understand the sword's power, and legends of curses believed to cling to each owner. Yet all these stories were told in a calm, flat tone, without dramatic emphasis, as if they were facts to be accepted without question. Daily activities of the knights also involved strict guarding of the sword, including monitoring anyone trying to approach it. Only those who had passed tests and earned trust were allowed into the secret chamber. Still, the fear of an unseen yet very real power always shadowed their every step. Outside the fortress, the nearby villagers lived simply, holding strong beliefs and legends passed down by word of mouth. They spoke of the sword that never reflected a face and the mysterious power it contained. To them, the sword was not just an object, but a symbol of something greater and unreachable. Something living between the human world and the spirit realm. When night came, the village turned quiet, filled with whispered stories shared under the darkness. A small, warm campfire became a gathering spot where people exchanged tales and mysteries about the fortress and the sword, guarded with utmost secrecy. These stories were told slowly and with feeling, heightening curiosity while providing calm to listeners longing for dark yet soothing narratives. The cold night brought deep silence, and the dark sky enveloped the fortress and its surroundings. In that darkness, the mystery of the sword that never reflected a face lived and pulsed, filling the space with soft whispers heard only by those truly willing to listen. These whispers were not just sounds, but sensations creeping slowly, bringing tranquility yet an inexplicable unease. The knights guarding the sword, though bound by heavy duties, found peace in their routines. There was something calming in the silence and order, even as the shadow of the empty blade haunted their thoughts. They realized they were keepers of a mystery involving not only physical power, but also unseen dimensions. The sword itself, with its shining yet empty surface, symbolized secrets never revealed. It was a mirror of uncertainty, a reminder that not everything important must be seen or fully understood. In quiet and calm, the sword stood as a silent witness to a past and an unwritten future. Such was life in this fortress, where reality and mystery blended as one. Amid a changing world and the passing of time, the sword that never reflected a face kept guarding endless secrets, allowing its keepers and visitors to be carried along a gentle current of stories filled with wonder and questions. Behind the thick fortress walls, life moved in a routine full of silence, but never truly quiet. The sound of footsteps in the long stone corridors echoed like a whisper from a past that never fully faded. In every corner, faint shadows lurked, seemingly waiting for the right moment to reveal secrets hidden for centuries. In that silence, the presence of the sword that never reflected the holder's face kept disturbing the mind, creating an atmosphere difficult to explain, yet deeply felt. The knights guarding the sword led lives filled with discipline and sacrifice. They knew the sword was not only a symbol of power, but also a heavy burden to bear. Every day they faced an inner battle between duty and fear of the power they protected. Yet, in the quiet and solitude, there was a profound respect for the shining sword, even though its reflection was always empty. In the fortress's basement lay a secret chamber known only to a few. There, the sword rested inside a wooden chest made of old oak, reinforced with rusted yet sturdy iron. Surrounding the chest were candles burning dimly, casting a soft and warm light. The scent of wax and aged wood mixed with the cold metallic aroma from the sword, creating a mystical and somewhat eerie atmosphere. That chamber also held ancient books containing records of the sword's history, rituals once performed, and its previous owners. These records were written with ink that seemed never to fade, despite being centuries old. There was something mysterious about that ink, perhaps like the sword that never reflected a face, refused to vanish with time. Every page held stories full of riddles and mysteries, making anyone who read feel drawn into another world filled with shadows and secrets. Tales told of knights who vanished without a trace after trying to understand the sword's power, and legends of curses believed to cling to each owner. Yet, all these stories were told in a calm, flat tone, without dramatic emphasis, as if they were facts to be accepted without question. Daily activities of the knights also involved strict guarding of the sword, including monitoring anyone trying to approach it. Only those who had passed tests and earned trust were allowed into the secret chamber. Still, the fear of an unseen yet very real power always shadowed their every step. Outside the fortress, the nearby villagers lived simply, holding strong beliefs and legends passed down by word of mouth. They spoke of the sword that never reflected a face and the mysterious power it contained. To them, the sword was not just an object, but a symbol of something greater and unreachable, something living between the human world and the spirit realm. When night came, the village turned quiet, filled with whispered stories shared under the darkness. A small, warm campfire became a gathering spot where people exchanged tales and mysteries about the fortress and the sword guarded with utmost secrecy. These stories were told slowly and with feeling, heightening curiosity while providing calm to listeners longing for dark yet soothing narratives. The cold night brought deep silence, and the dark sky enveloped the fortress and its surroundings. In that darkness, the mystery of the sword that never reflected a face lived and pulsed, filling the space with soft whispers heard only by those truly willing to listen. These whispers were not just sounds, but sensations creeping slowly, bringing tranquility, yet an inexplicable unease. The knights guarding the sword, though bound by heavy duties, found peace in their routines. There was something calming in the silence and order, even as the shadow of the empty blade haunted their thoughts. They realized they were keepers of a mystery involving not only physical power, but also unseen dimensions. The sword itself, with its shining yet empty surface, symbolized secrets never revealed. It was a mirror of uncertainty, a reminder that not everything important must be seen or fully understood. In quiet and calm, the sword stood as a silent witness to a past and an unwritten future. Such was life in this fortress, where reality and mystery blended as one. Amid a changing world and the passing of time, the sword that never reflected a face kept guarding endless secrets, allowing its keepers and visitors to be carried along a gentle current of stories filled with wonder and questions. That night, as stars slowly appeared one by one in the dark sky, the fortress seemed to exhale a long, gentle breath. The night wind blew softly, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth, touching leaves that trembled lightly. Inside the secret room, candlelight danced upon stone walls, casting shadows that moved endlessly. The Templar's sword remained in its place, shining yet still without reflecting the face of its holder. The mystery felt more alive as the silence of the night enveloped everything. The guards, who had endured a heavy routine all day, sat quietly gazing at the sword with a different kind of attention. There was fatigue in their eyes, but also vigilance that never faded. They knew the night brought different opportunities and dangers, and that the sword was not just an inanimate object, it seemed to be an entity watching and guarding the secret from being revealed. An old guard, who had served for decades, began telling an old story to the younger ones. With a calm yet meaningful voice, he recounted the time when the sword was first discovered. It was said that the sword was made from a metal of unknown origin, with mystical power even the best blacksmiths could not explain. Each holder of the sword was said to undergo a heavy soul trial, and not all succeeded. Those stories were not only facts, but also imagination fused together with history. The listeners felt carried away to a past full of shadows and whispered secrets. They imagined the brave Templars, yet also trapped in dilemmas and powers beyond their control. In that silence, the story became a bridge between the real world and the realm of mystery. Besides tales, the guards also discussed strange phenomena they experienced at night. There were soft rustling sounds, like whispers undetectable by ordinary ears. There were flashes of light appearing without cause, and shadows moving in the corner of the eye. All of this made them increasingly aware that the sword held another dimension that was hard to explain. Yet they also knew such knowledge must be kept tightly sealed, so as not to provoke fear or excessive speculation. Meanwhile, outside the fortress, the sounds of the night echoed softly. The chirping of crickets, the blowing wind, and the ripple of a river created a soothing melody. The villagers had long gone to sleep, allowing the night to carry them into deep dreams. But in their minds, the story of the sword and its keepers remained a mystery that tempted curiosity, even though they did not know the true answer. The night continued quietly, and the sword stood upright, radiating an aura impossible to ignore. As if it held millions of untold stories, guarding secrets greater than anything imaginable. In the meaningful silence, the mystery of the Templar sword continued, inviting anyone brave enough to delve into its depths. As time passed, the sword became a symbol of uncertainty and eternity. No one knew who made it or why its reflection was always empty. Some said the sword was cursed and only showed the emptiness of its owner's soul. Yet, behind all these stories, there remained questions hanging without definite answers. What exactly was the power hidden behind the gleam of that metal? And why did no reflection ever appear on its surface, even though the object clearly shone like a mirror? In the shadow of the old and mysterious fortress, many tried to understand the meaning behind this sword. Some believed the sword was not just a weapon, but also a window to another world, a portal that tightly sealed the identity of anyone who held it. Every sword bearer might lose themselves in that empty mirror, as if the sword swallowed their presence without a trace. This caused fear and deep curiosity at the same time, because no one wanted to lose themselves, but everyone wanted to know the secret behind it. On the other hand, there were also more spiritual and metaphysical theories that the sword represented the symbol of self-ignorance or the absence of ego. When someone held the sword, the empty mirror became the reflection of their hidden soul. Not showing a face did not mean absence, but a sign that what appeared on the surface was only a small part of the whole self. In the Templar culture full of rituals and symbolic meaning, this could be a hidden lesson about self-discovery and surrendering to a power greater than oneself. Many stories circulated among the guards and nearby villagers about people who tried holding the sword and experienced strange changes. Some felt as if becoming hollow, lost in the emptiness, while others felt a strange peace. Some even claimed to see shadows or flashes of pasts that were not their own, like fragments of history lingering in the sword's light. All these experiences added layers of mystery and grandeur surrounding the Templar sword. The night grew deeper, and the cold wind began to brush against the fortress windows with a whispering sound. The sword remained still, not making any sound or signs of life, but its mysterious aura continued to fill the room. In the dense silence, thoughts about past and future gathered, creating an atmosphere that was calm yet full of tension. Anyone near the sword, even just in thought, felt the weight of the stored history and secrets yet to be revealed. Everything related to this sword seemed to contain duality, beauty, and horror, strength and weakness, light and dark. It became a silent witness to the journey of time and changing eras. Every scratch and glint of light on its metal was a silent witness to many untold stories. In the quiet of the night, the sword became a reminder of things that could not be explained in words. A mystery still waiting to be solved by those brave enough to look into its empty mirror. As the night grew deeper, the shadows around the sword seemed more alive in the silence. There was something unseen, yet felt like air moving slowly, even when there was no wind. Time seemed to slow down, and the space grew heavy with an inexplicable presence. Behind the old stone walls, long hidden history crept to the surface, calling the attention of anyone willing to listen. The story of this sword was not just a legend, but a narrative living between reality and mystery. The guards on night duty often felt a different presence when near the sword. Some said they had seen faint shadows moving quickly, or heard soft whispers not coming from humans. Yet no one dared approach the sword without strong preparation and courage. They knew the sword possessed power far beyond its physical function, a power capable of changing anyone who touched it. In old records stored in the fortress library, there were vague clues about the sword's origin. It was written that the sword was made by a blacksmith who was also an alchemist, trying to combine science and mystical power. The metal used was not only from the earth, but contained elements inexplicable by ordinary science. Its creation involved hidden rituals believed to summon forces from another realm, making this sword unique and full of mystery. What was most intriguing, however, was how the sword interacted with its bearer. Unlike ordinary weapons that reflected faces or images, this sword refused to show anyone. It was like a statement that a person's identity or ego could not be captured or recognized by the sword. In the historical and Templar belief context, this might symbolize that true power comes from letting go of ego and facing emptiness as a form of enlightenment. When morning arrived and the first sunlight pierced through the fortress's small windows, the sword still stood firm. Its shine did not fade, and the secrets within remained tightly sealed. Yet in that tranquility, there was an unspoken promise that the mystery would live on, waiting to be discovered by those patient and brave enough to delve into its depths. This Templar sword was not just an object, but a silent witness of an era full of riddles and wonders. Night turned to morning, and the fortress grew silent with a different atmosphere. The sword remained the center of attention, not only as a weapon, but as a symbol of the unexplained. In its silence, the sword invited us to reflect, question, and contemplate the true meaning of mystery and emptiness. It was an invitation to explore the hidden world beneath the surface, where history, imagination, and belief intersect. In the dim morning light, the sword's shadow stretched across the cold, rough stone floor. There was a strange calmness, like a whispering breeze carrying stories from an untouched past. The fortress guards began to open their eyes, yet the sword remained still, as if waiting for something they could not understand. This object was not just an ancient artifact kept in a dark room, but an entity with its own life, pulsating with the rhythm of time that kept flowing. In that silence, we are invited to imagine who once held this sword. The brave Templar knights fighting in bloody battles, or perhaps someone praying in silence full of fear. Every touch on that sword carried its own story, traces of emotions and thoughts hidden behind the gleaming metal. There was a deep silence, an empty space that seemed to absorb and store everything that ever happened. Not only as a weapon, this sword also became a silent witness to events not recorded in official history. Like ghostly whispers slipping behind fortress walls, stories of betrayal, forbidden love, and great sacrifice were hidden behind its shine. Every scratch and mark on this sword held secrets never revealed, waiting for the right time to be uncovered. In the stillness, this object became a bridge between past and present, between the real and the untouchable. For historians and observers, this sword triggered extraordinary curiosity. What made it different? Why did it not reflect its owner's face? Was it a symbol or a curse? All theories and speculations swirled in their minds, but none could answer for sure. The silence of the sword only increased its allure, like a puzzle never finished, calling everyone who heard it to join in an endless quest. In Templar culture, symbolism and hidden meaning were very important. This sword might not only be a weapon of war, but also a symbol of spirituality and enlightenment. When someone held it, perhaps they were reminded of the need to let go of ego, face inner emptiness, and accept the uncertainties of life. In the sword's silence, there was a deep lesson about courage, surrender, and the search for meaning greater than oneself. While the world outside the fortress kept changing, this sword remained eternal in its silence. It waited for someone who could approach it not only with their hands, but with an open heart and mind. In a world full of doubt and fear, the sword offered an empty mirror, a hollow space full of possibilities. Whoever dared to look into that emptiness might find something more valuable than just their reflection. Behind every ancient object stored within the old fortress, there lies a story not easily found. This sword is no exception. It takes us back to a time when the world was still dark and full of uncertainty, when knights fought not only with weapons, but also with deep faith and fear. In every curve of the sword, there is a tale waiting to be told, a story of courage and sacrifice, of secrets hidden behind the veil of time. One story often linked to this sword is the legend of a knight who mysteriously disappeared after holding it. It is said that the man seemed to change physically and mentally, as if bound by an unseen power. In records stored on an ancient scroll, it is written that this sword has the ability to absorb souls or influence the minds of anyone who touches it. This myth adds to the mystical aura surrounding the object, strengthening the belief that this sword is not just an ordinary weapon. Daily activities in the fortress give a glimpse of how life went on around the sword. The guards, though cautious, carried out their duties calmly. They cleaned other weapons, prepared provisions, and guarded the fortress from possible enemy attacks. However, beneath all these activities, the sword remained the center of attention, like a magnet attracting the minds and feelings of everyone nearby. There was a subtle tension, an energy difficult to explain but truly felt. At night, the atmosphere around the sword changed to a quieter and more mysterious one. Flickering candlelight highlighted the gleaming metal surface, creating shadows that seemed to move and live. In that silence, there was a hidden fear within the guards. They knew this sword was not just a tool of defense, but also a source of power that could confuse and trap anyone who was not careful. The ticking of an ancient clock echoed on the walls, reminding that time continued even though the secret remained hidden. The description of the object and place cannot be separated from imagination, envisioning the heavy burden the sword carried. Imagine a sword holding the energy of thousands of battles, fear and courage, and hopes lost and found again. It became a silent witness to everything that happened around the fortress, holding secrets only understood by those who could open their eyes wider and their hearts deeper. As we reflect on all this, the sword becomes more than just a metal object. It is a symbol of time that never stops, of mysteries never solved, and of power hidden in emptiness. It teaches us that not everything must be known, that there is beauty in not knowing, and that sometimes the deepest things lie in what is unseen. As the morning creeps beyond the horizon, the old fortress still stands strong, housing the Templar sword that never reflects its holder's face. As if the sword possesses its own consciousness, refusing to reveal the secrets hidden beneath its gleaming surface. The guards on duty have grown accustomed to the presence of this enigmatic sword. Yet they continue to treat it with utmost respect and caution. A weapon unlike any other, not only in form, but in everything attached to it. On certain days, the sword seems to show signs of life. A faint glow pulses along its blade, as if beating to the rhythm of an invisible time. This sparks various speculations from historians and modern scientists, who try to find rational explanations. Yet all efforts only deepen the mystery, as no one can explain the phenomenon with certainty. The sword remains the center of attention, an artifact that transcends logic and enters a more mystical realm. In the storage room where the sword is kept, there is an atmosphere hard to describe. The smell of metal mixed with old dust fills the air, and flickering candlelight adds to the mystical impression enveloping the room. Every time someone approaches the sword, a coldness creeps over the skin, a sensation that cannot be explained with ordinary words. Fear and curiosity mingle into one, creating an atmosphere full of tension yet undeniably alluring. Knights who once held this sword are said to have undergone profound changes, both physically and mentally. Some became calmer and wiser, while others descended into madness and despair. Stories about them are widely spread in secret documents accessible only to certain circles. This adds another layer of mystery about a sword that seems to possess the power to influence the human soul in ways that cannot be scientifically explained. In the silence of the night, when the fortress sleeps and only the whispering wind is heard, the sword stands still in its place. Unchanged, unmoving, yet full of energy that feels very real. As if it waits for the right moment to unveil the secret veil. It has hidden all this time, a mystery that may never be solved, but continues to spark imagination and curiosity in anyone who approaches it with respect and awe. Days passed with a rhythm almost unchanged in that old fortress. The lives of the guards and nearby villagers moved quietly, although the shadow of the Templar sword was always present in their peripheral vision. The sword was not just an inanimate object, but an entity living in silence, holding secrets too heavy to be directly revealed. Behind its captivating shine lay a power capable of altering souls and twisting minds. Over time, the guards grew more familiar with the sword's strange nature. There were times when they held it to clean or inspect, feeling waves of energy that were hard to explain. Some described it as a bone-chilling coldness, while others felt an inner pressure forcing them to withdraw as quickly as possible. This peculiarity was not something to ignore, for it had become part of their life, revolving around the mystery. The sword also became a source of inspiration and fear for villagers living not far from the fortress. Stories about it spread from mouth to mouth, filled with whispers seemingly coming from the past. They said the sword was once used in unusual rituals involving sacrifices and ancient chants. Though there was no concrete evidence, these rumors were enough to make people keep their distance and treat the object with cautious respect. Inside the fortress, a special room was tightly guarded where the sword was kept. The room itself looked sacred, with stone walls carved with ancient symbols difficult to understand. Candles that were always lit added warmth, yet a deep, mystical impression. The light footsteps and heartbeat of the guards could be clearly heard in the silence, as if merging with the energy emanating from the sword. Every small detail about this sword held profound meaning. From the intricate carvings on the hilt to the shimmering blade that seemed alive, all contained hidden messages yet to be solved. There was a theory that the sword was a bridge between the real world and the supernatural, a tool connecting knights with powers beyond human understanding. Yet again, this was only speculation enriching the layers of mystery that kept growing. As time went by, the legend of the Templar sword spread far beyond the fortress and the small village surrounding it. Even nobles and scholars from distant cities began to show deep interest, hoping to uncover the secrets behind the sword's gleam. They came with burning curiosity and hope, but many returned disappointed without satisfactory answers. The atmosphere in the fortress started to change with the arrival of guests from various places. Some tried to hold the sword, hoping to see their reflection on its shining blade. Yet, as usual, the reflection remained empty, as if the sword refused to reveal anyone who held it. This added to the strangeness and reinforced the mystical aura surrounding the artifact. Amidst the crowd, only the old guards truly understood how heavy and profound the mystery was. They knew the sword was not an ordinary weapon, but an entity living in a different dimension. There was deep respect and hidden fear, for they realized that touching the sword meant confronting something beyond human control. The villagers living in the fortress's shadow had their own stories. They often recounted strange experiences faced by family or neighbors after being near the sword. Some suffered recurring nightmares, whispered voices at night, or feelings of being watched by unseen eyes. All these added layers to the mystery, seemingly swallowing the entire surrounding area. Meanwhile, scientists trying to examine the sword with modern technology often failed to get clear results. Sophisticated tools used to scan or analyze the sword's material only showed vague and hard-to-understand data. Some even reported technical disturbances when approaching the sword, as if a power was protecting and concealing the secrets inside. Night fell upon the old fortress, and the atmosphere grew quieter, almost as if waiting for something unseen. The flickering candlelight inside the sword's storage room danced upon the rough stone walls, creating shadows that seemed alive and whispering softly. The wind blowing through the cracks in the window carried a chill that crept into the bones, adding a subtle yet inevitable tension. At times like this, the old guards often pondered the long history of the sword, the Templar knights who once held it, and the dark events shrouding its existence. They imagined secret rituals in hidden underground chambers, where the sword was used for purposes never openly told. Shadows of men dressed in white uniforms with red crosses standing in circles of candles, reciting prayers and chants now left only as whispered legends. The ticking of an old clock in the corner became the only sign of time passing, reminding that the outside world kept spinning regardless of the dark secrets kept here. The sword, with its empty reflection, seemed to refuse anyone seeing itself fully. There was a kind of metaphysical emptiness hanging, making anyone who approached feel detached from everyday reality. Each time the sword was touched, individuals felt different sensations. Some felt a gentle warmth, as if the sword possessed a living soul. Others felt an invisible weight, as if carrying the hidden burdens of the world within its blade. These things are hard to describe with words, for they are more intuitive experiences that transcend human understanding. In the silence of the night, thoughts drifted to the dark, mysterious past. Perhaps the sword had witnessed betrayal, bloody battles, and broken sacred promises. Or maybe the sword was the key to opening another world, one existing only in the nightmares of the knights who once held it. All these possibilities intertwined in minds, without definite answers to quench curiosity. No one truly knew how or when this sword was first made, or why its reflection was always empty. Some theories suggested it was forged with unusual metal blends containing magical elements that set it apart from other weapons. Others believed the sword was cursed by dark powers, causing any reflection attempting to appear on its surface to vanish without a trace. Yet, without concrete evidence, these remain mysteries, shadowing every generation. Slowly, the night deepened and the air grew colder. The sounds inside the fortress quieted, leaving only the wind sigh and the clock S ticking in the sword storage room. Outside the window, the night sky was filled with dimly twinkling stars. As if guarding the secrets hidden behind the reflectionless sword, the artifact remained still, waiting for the right time to reveal its true story to the world. When the first morning light touched the old fortress, a soft glow filtered through the thick, cold stone window cracks. The morning air brought freshness, yet a mysterious aura still enveloped the reflectionless sword. The guards began gathering in the storage room, preparing for a long day with minds still full of questions about the object they protected. The sound of footsteps, muffled by the old wooden floor, filled the silent room, marking the start of a routine yet deeply meaningful activity. The artifact was not just considered a weapon, but a symbol of power and secrets that must not be known by just anyone. The sword was believed to contain spiritual power closely tied to the history of the Templars and the conflicts that led to their exile and downfall. Within every curve of its blade was believed to reside energy that could affect the mind and soul of anyone brave enough to approach it. However, the true story remained shrouded in an unsolved mystery. The old guards had special rituals before touching the sword. They stepped carefully, avoiding direct contact with the blade, as if honoring the presence of something far greater than themselves. Some even used special cloths believed to neutralize any dark energy that might emanate from the sword. All these actions demonstrated how deeply fear and respect were embedded in the culture of guarding the artifact. Meanwhile, outside the fortress, life went on as usual. The village at the foot of the hill remained quiet, with the daily activities of farmers and traders largely unchanged for centuries. Yet for those who knew, the shadow of the mysterious sword always loomed behind their daily lives. Stories of strange occurrences, whispered voices at night, and shadowy figures near the fortress became part of folklore passed down through generations, adding a dark color to the seemingly peaceful atmosphere. Over time, some newcomers tried to delve deeper into the sword's history. They gathered old records, read difficult manuscripts, and tried to connect scattered story points from various sources. Yet every effort often ended in confusion and disappointment, because many parts of the story were missing or deliberately hidden. There was a sense that the sword was not just a physical object, but also a puzzle, challenging human reason and inviting endless curiosity. Among these stories was a tale of a young knight who attempted to wield the sword in their final battle. It was said that when the sword was raised, the battlefield seemed to shift into another world, where time and space lost meaning. The knight disappeared without a trace, and the sword returned to its place, still reflectionless and full of secrets. This story became a legend, reminding all that the sword was not merely a tool, but a bridge between the real world and something darker and unreachable. Thus, the sword remained in the shadows of history, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true story. Yet, just like night continuously turns into day, the mystery lived on among the people around it. Each generation greeted it with the same curiosity, but no one truly knew what lay behind the empty reflection that always refused to show anyone holding the sword. The sun began to rise slowly, chasing away the shadows of the night still clinging to the corners of the fortress. The guards watching over the Templar sword continued their duty with full vigilance. The atmosphere inside the storage room was so quiet, as if every object and wall held stories that must not be revealed. The sword lay on a wooden stand, shining with a reflection of light that emitted silence and emptiness. Every time someone approached, a coldness, faint yet real, seeped into their soul, warning that this was more than just an ordinary weapon. Time seemed to stop as a guard's hand gently touched the sword's hilt. No reflection or shadow appeared on the blade. There was only a deep, silent void, as if the sword was an empty mirror, refusing to show the identity of anyone trying to know it. From here came unanswered questions. Does the sword truly possess a living soul? Or is it merely an artifact wrapped in legends and dark stories that shroud the past? In the minds of the guards and historians investigating, the sword became a symbol of something greater, a secret that might hold the key to understanding a grim past. They imagined the life of the Templars filled with secret rituals, sacred oaths, and unimaginable sacrifices. The sword was a silent witness to a time when faith and power battled in shadows, where every step was colored by danger and uncertainty. Amid the morning calm, faint whispers were heard from the corner of the room, like echoes from the past trying to convey a hidden message. The voices told tales of betrayal, revenge, and curses haunting every wielder of the sword. Yet no one could be sure whether it was truly a voice or merely an illusion created by a mind full of fear and curiosity. The sword remained an unsolved mystery, yet a magnet for those who sought to unveil the veil of dark history. Behind it all, life outside the fortress went on. But the shadow of the reflectionless sword always lurked in the minds of those who heard its tale. Village children were taught not to approach the fortress at night, and adults often whispered silent prayers, hoping the mystery would not bring disaster. The story of the sword became part of folklore, teaching the limits between courage and arrogance, and how fragile humans are when faced with powers they cannot fully comprehend. In the days that followed, the activity within the fortress began to resemble a slow dance accompanied by unseen tension. The younger guards looked at the sword with a deep curiosity mixed with a binding fear. They knew this was not merely a historical relic, but an entity living in silence and emptiness. Each time light touched the blade, an invisible sensation seemed to slow down and weigh heavily on time around it. It was as if another world merged with the real world on the cold metal surface. One night, a young guard named Thomas was moved to approach the sword closer than usual. Carefully, he extended his hand silently, touching the hilt that felt cold and almost pulsating. At that moment, he felt a wave of vibrations difficult to explain, like a soft whisper trying to convey something that could not be spoken in words. Thomas felt as though his soul was connected to a deep history and secrets that must not be revealed. Yet, when he glanced at the blade, the empty reflection haunted him again, swallowing his identity in the void. The next day, Thomas appeared different. He was quieter and often stared at the sword with a gaze that seemed to seek answers. Other guards began to notice his changed demeanor, but dared not ask. A creeping fear enveloped them, afraid that the sword would draw them into its dark and endless mystery. Thomas became a symbol of the hidden danger within the silent object, a warning for anyone daring to cross the boundary between humans and inexplicable powers. As the slow, changing seasons passed, stories about the sword spread to nearby villages. The elders who once heard tales from their ancestors began sharing warnings about the curse attached to the sword. It was said that every wielder who sought the truth would be haunted by shadows of a dark past, and their soul trapped in an endless corridor of time. This story deepened the heavy atmosphere around the fortress, turning it into a nearly forgotten place shrouded in fog, secrets, and fear. Yet despite all this, the sword remained an irreplaceable object. Historians and researchers from various places came hoping to find new clues, piecing together fragments of history lost to time. They brought modern tools and techniques, attempting to uncover layers of mystery long covered by time and legend. But like faint light reflected on the sword's blade, every answer they found only led to new questions, an endless cycle binding them to eternal silence. Time continued to pass, leaving faint marks on the surface of the sword and in the minds of everyone who had ever faced it. Although no one could unravel its deepest secret, the shadows of legend continued to live and grow, mingling with the cold night wind around the old fortress. The guards, who changed over time, became silent witnesses to the journey of the reflectionless sword, as well as keepers of an unsolved mystery. They knew this sword was not just an inanimate object. It was a symbol of human ignorance and fears that never truly disappeared. On a dark and silent night, thick fog enveloped the fortress and its surroundings. In the stillness, soft footsteps approached the sword storage room. An old man, known as a historian and seeker of truth, slowly entered the room. He carried an ancient book and simple writing tools, ready to record whatever might be revealed. However, when he gazed at the sword, the mysterious aura radiating from its blade made his heart pound and his mind drift to an untouched past. The old man began reading some ancient notes related to the sword, trying to connect scattered points of history found in manuscripts and folklore. He imagined the Templars, who wielded it in battle and secret ceremonies that bound their souls to the weapon. Yet, as time passed, many details were lost or deliberately hidden, leaving a void to be filled with imagination and speculation. In the dimness of the room, shadows of the past seemed to come alive, as if the sword itself was summoning forgotten memories. Meanwhile, outside the fortress, village life continued with all its simplicity and uncertainty. The inhabitants, rarely seeing light from the fortress, only heard tales about the reflectionless sword that filled their nights with fear and curiosity. They lived their days hoping the mystery would never become real for them. Yet somehow, the sword's influence felt like a gentle wave slowly spreading to every corner, touching the hearts and minds of all who had heard its story. In that silent night, the sword lay without reflection, an empty mirror refusing to reveal anyone brave enough to touch it. It was like a door to another world that could not be opened, holding secrets that might never be understood by humans. And in that silence, invisible whispers continued to echo, inviting anyone to step closer, yet warning that not all that is sought should be found. As morning began to seep through the cracks of the fortress, sunlight pierced the thin mist still hanging in the air. The sword lay on the old wooden altar, without the usual reflection found on polished metal. The face of anyone standing before it remained empty. An emptiness holding more questions than answers. The guards exchanged glances filled with curiosity and faint fear, as if they understood that this object was a vortex of time, swallowing secrets within itself without ever leaking them. Outside the fortress, life continued as usual, yet the atmosphere around it slowly changed into something invisible yet palpable. The villagers living on the hillside near the fortress began sensing the presence of something strange. Dark shadows appeared at the edges of their vision. Soft whispers were heard in the night wind, and coldness crept on the skin without clear reason. They spoke in hushed tones about the curse carried by the sword, although no one had ever seen it directly. The mystery became a story, endlessly revolving, like a circle without beginning or end. Inside the fortress, the guards lived their days with routines filled with unseen anxiety. Some claimed to see faint shadows flicker at the corner of their eyes when patrolling stone corridors. Others felt cold breaths suddenly touch their necks in empty places. Yet, no one dared to speak openly about these experiences, fearing being labeled insane or even targeted by the hidden curse within the sword. A silence filled with creeping tension spread slowly but surely. One night, when the stars dimly yellowed in the sky, a young guard newly assigned stood directly before the sword. With trembling hands, he tried to see his reflection in the blade, hoping to find something a mirror of the soul or a clue from the past. But as usual, all he saw was an empty space without a shadow. Frustration and fear overwhelmed him. Realizing the sword was more than just an object, but a mystery refusing to be unraveled by human reason. Over time, the story of the reflectionless sword attracted the attention of a metaphysics expert who came from afar. He believed the sword held an energy that could not be measured by ordinary science. In his quiet studies, he attempted to communicate with that energy using meditation and ancient rituals. Yet what he found was only a deep void and whispers that could not be understood. The sword remained an enigma that refused to be solved, leaving truth seekers with endless questions. Days turned into weeks, and weeks became months, with the sword remaining the center of attention in a chilling silence. Historians from all over the world tried to unravel its story, but only found layer upon layer of untouched mystery. They studied ancient manuscripts, excavated ruins, and even attempted to use modern technology to scan the sword's surface. Yet the result remained the same. No reflection of any human face could be found, only emptiness enveloping its blade. When thin mist covered the fortress in the morning, the atmosphere became like another world. The gentle scent of old wood mixed with cold air added a mystical impression to the room where the sword was kept. Every passing second felt like a breath from the past, trying to whisper to anyone willing to listen. But that voice was always faint, never clear enough to be understood, sparking deep curiosity alongside a subtle fear. The villagers gathered more often to share the legend of the reflectionless sword beneath the firelight. They recounted stories passed down from generation to generation, though most sounded like bedtime tales. Yet beneath those stories lay a strong belief that the sword was not just an inanimate object but possessed a trapped soul yearning for release. Some elders even claimed the sword could read the hearts and minds of those who held it, revealing the darkness hidden within. In the fortress's basement, a secret chamber was accidentally discovered by a young guard. The room was filled with notes and ancient artifacts explaining rituals and ceremonies, once performed to keep the sword hidden and protected. One record described a sacred oath taken by the Templars guarding the sword, involving sacrifice and promises binding their souls forever. This added a new layer to the existing mystery, making the sword not only a symbol of power, but also a curse passed down. At night, when the full moon hung low in the sky, the atmosphere in the fortress became more intense. The fog covering the fortress grew thicker, and the previously faint shadows became clearer, moving as if alive. Unseen footsteps echoed in the stone corridors, creating a subtle yet real horror ambience. In that stillness, the sword remained silent, but its mysterious aura grew stronger, as if daring anyone to uncover the secrets hidden in its empty blade. Time went on, and the curiosity about the sword deepened. Visitors to the fortress often complained of strange sensations after seeing the sword. Some said they felt a coldness piercing to the bone, while others felt as if eyes were watching from behind its gleaming blade that held no reflection. The atmosphere around the sword seemed to emit an energy difficult to explain, creating an uneasy feeling yet a strong allure for those fascinated by mystery. In the ancient records found in the secret room, there were faint clues about rituals once performed to contain the sword's power. The rituals involved reciting words in a long-extinct language, accompanied by strange symbols carved into the stone walls. No one knew the exact meaning of these rituals, but the belief that the sword possessed its own soul or entity was strengthened by the evidence of these rites. This led to the thought that the sword was not just an ordinary weapon, but a bridge between the human world and the unseen realm. The fortress guards also had strict rules about who was allowed to touch the sword. Only those initiated and sworn loyal to the Templar order could directly interact with it. Even among them, a deep-seated fear existed about truly grasping the sword. They knew it could reveal the darkest parts within a person, something more terrifying than death itself. This made the sword a symbol of power and a hidden threat behind its dazzling shine. On a rare occasion, a visiting poet tried to write about his experience near the sword. He described how time seemed to slow and everything around became blurry, except the sword that remained sharp and shining. In his writing, he called the sword a window into another dimension where reality and imagination collided. This writing became one of the most mysterious records ever found, leaving readers with deeper curiosity and a desire to explore the sword's secrets further. The belief and stories about the reflectionless sword continued from generation to generation, like an unending whisper. Those who came close to the sword felt a power far beyond human understanding, an eternal mystery inviting anyone brave enough to unveil its veil, though the answer might never be found. The sword stood silent on the altar, a mute witness to a story wrapped in silence and shadows. In the stillness of the night, the shadow of the sword resting on the altar seemed to come alive. The flickering candlelight danced upon its surface, creating a play of light and shadow that appeared to hold its own secrets. The atmosphere inside the fortress grew silent. Only the soft rustling of the wind passing through cracked old window panes could be heard. When eyes closed, it was easy to imagine the hidden traces of history behind the cold steel of the sword. Stories of knights who once grasped it, sacred vows tightly bound to fate, and unspoken darkness still enveloping the blade. Some believed the sword was not merely a weapon, but a kind of gateway to another world. A world full of lost spirits whispering through the night wind, trying to communicate with anyone willing to listen. Sometimes the voice came as a soft murmur, other times as echoes booming through stone corridors. And among all those whispers, there was something that could never be explained in words, a mystery untouched by human reason. The presence of the sword had a profound psychological effect on anyone who interacted with it. Some felt enlightened and connected to something greater, while others were trapped in unexpected inner darkness. The sword seemed to test the soul, determining who was worthy to possess it and who was not. This tension made the sword not just an artifact, but an experience that combined power, mystery, and fear into an inseparable whole. In the long silence of the night, the sword remained still, yet its mysterious aura continued to radiate, drawing curious souls closer to try to understand what could not be explained. A story that lived on in shadows, waiting to be revealed, yet perhaps destined to remain a secret forever. Like the silent whisper filling space and time in this isolated old fortress. As we begin to delve deeper into the mystery of the Templar sword that never reflects its holder's face, we enter a realm that becomes increasingly blurred and filled with riddles. Many historians, archaeologists, spiritual researchers have attempted to understand the origin and hidden meaning of this artifact. Yet every discovery only raises new, unanswered questions. Beneath the gleaming metal surface lies a secret connected to ancient beliefs and forgotten ritual practices. A woven story linking humans with powers beyond the physical world. According to some records found in secret manuscripts, the sword was made from unusual materials containing rare metals said to absorb spiritual energy. This metal not only made the sword strong and durable, but also gave it mystical properties unlike any other weapon of its time. This explains why the blade's reflection is always empty. Perhaps because the metal absorbs the light and shadows that would normally reflect, creating a disturbing illusion of emptiness. Furthermore, the sword is believed to symbolize an eternal pact between the Templar Knights and the dark forces they sought to control. A covenant that binds the soul of its bearer in an endless cycle of power and suffering. Therefore, no holder can truly see themselves in the reflection, because the sword has swallowed their identity, merging with the darkness hidden within it. In the end, This sword is not just a weapon, but a living metaphor for the eternal conflict between light and darkness, between humans and forces beyond reason. A mystery that invites us to keep questioning and feeling, even though the answer may never be revealed. Much like the quiet night where the sound of the wind and the sword as shadow blend in a silent yet meaningful harmony. The night continues quietly, as if guarding the secret of the Templar sword resting on the altar. In that silent atmosphere, the shadow of the sword seems to shift shape, following the slow and steady rhythm of the heartbeat. We can imagine ourselves there, feeling the cold air and the scent of ancient stone mingling with the nearly extinguished candle. All senses become sharper, picking up small sounds previously unheard, like faint whispers from the past. Those sounds might be echoes of secret ceremonies once held in that room centuries ago. The Templar Knights, with their iconic white robes and Red Cross emblem, gathered in a sacred circle, chanting mysterious prayers and mantras. Every movement they made was full of meaning and power, as if summoning something greater than just God or ordinary humans. The ritual was not only about loyalty, but also a covenant binding their souls forever. Each verse of prayer and chant echoed throughout the fortress, penetrating thick stone walls and infusing unseen energy into the sword at the center of the altar. The sword became a silent witness to the inseparable bond between the human world and the supernatural realm. Perhaps that is why its reflection remains empty, for it does not only reflect the physical, but also the soul and deepest secrets hidden from ordinary human sight. As we imagine this scene again, there is a warmth and coldness intertwined. Warmth from the candlelight illuminating the darkness, and coldness from the untouched mystery. A subtle tension that binds heart and mind, making us realize that not all secrets need to be known of, and some mysteries are meant to maintain the balance between light and dark. We can imagine how the Templar Knights lived their days with extraordinary dedication, full of discipline and strict rituals. Every morning they wore clean white robes, symbolizing purity and devotion, while in their hands they held swords that were not just weapons, but symbols of great responsibility awaiting them. They underwent exhausting physical training, shaping both body and soul to be ready for any challenge coming from outside or from within themselves. Yet beneath that firmness and sanctity, hidden fears and doubts, seldom spoken of, lingered. Many of them felt there was something darker lurking, something invisible to the naked eye, but always felt in the air and in the heart. The sword they held was not merely an inanimate object, but a living entity radiating energy difficult to comprehend, entangling anyone who possessed it in a complicated and dangerous web of destiny. Over time, stories about this sword spread beyond the fortress and entered the whispers of the surrounding community. Some said the sword could reveal a person's deepest secrets, even the darkest ones, while others believed it carried a curse for anyone daring to lift it without a truly pure heart. These beliefs made the sword even more mysterious and tightly guarded by the knights, as if they knew a greater power than themselves awaited behind that gleaming blade. In the solitude of the remote fortress, the sword became an inseparable focus of attention and fear. It was a silent witness to the ambition, sacrifice, and suffering experienced by its owners throughout the ages. And perhaps that is the true essence of this sword, not merely a tool for battle, but a symbol of the eternal struggle between humans and the darkness, always lurking behind the light. In the solitude of the old fortress located on a remote hilltop, each night brings a different atmosphere as the shadow of the sword slowly dances under the moonlight. The sound of wind passing through stone ruins creates a soft melody that seems to become the soundtrack of an endless story. In the dark and damp basement where the sword is kept, there is a mysterious aura that is hard to explain. The scent of wet earth, a mix of old wood, and dimly lit candles form an atmosphere inviting both curiosity and calm. The fortress guards speak in whispers about the legend surrounding the sword, warning that it is not just a weapon, but also a gateway to an unseen world. They believe that at certain times, especially during moonless dark nights, the sword begins to vibrate with energy that cannot be explained scientifically. This vibration is felt throughout the fortress, bringing sensations that make the hair stand on end and thoughts drift into deeper realms. The circulating stories mention that the sword was once used in secret rituals involving the summoning of supernatural entities, which then left traces of dark power haunting every bearer. The ritual was not just an ordinary ceremony, but a spiritual journey that took the sword as owner beyond the boundaries of the real world and the spirit world. Many believe that the effect of this ritual caused the sword to lose its ability to reflect human shadows, because it had become a bridge between two different realms. Although many feared approaching the sword, some were drawn to its power and tried to uncover the secrets hidden beneath its gleaming surface. However, almost no one succeeded in bringing home definite answers. Instead, those who delved too deeply often experienced mysterious changes, both physical and mental. This adds layers of fear and wonder enveloping the story of the Templar sword, making it a living legend that continues to evolve over time. With each passing night, whispers about the sword grow stronger and begin to seep into the dreams of the fortress guards. They report experiencing faint visions where the sword gleams with an unusual light, emitting an aura that seems to pierce the soul. In these dreams, they often see a shapeless black shadow, like a floating figure without form, yet always present around the sword. This figure seems to be the guardian of secrets that no one can disturb. The knights and guards who felt these things began limiting their contact with the sword, afraid of something unseen yet very real. They chose to keep the sword in the most hidden place within the fortress, behind thick layers of stone and rusty iron doors, as if trying to separate the human world from the dark power concealed within the blade. However, curiosity still lurked in their hearts, driving some to find out what exactly lay behind that empty reflection. Old stories passed down through generations mention that the sword was made by a blacksmith who not only had extraordinary skill, but also knowledge of forgotten occult arts. The sword was forged using metal from a meteor that fell from the sky, combined with special rituals and mantras intended to bind a protective spirit into its blade. However, the spirit bound was not an entity easily controlled. Over time, it developed its own will, influencing anyone who held the sword with unimaginable power. The effects of this sword on its owners were not only physical, but also mental. Many experience nightmares, behavioral changes, and unexplained fears. Some were even reported to have mysteriously disappeared after trying to use the sword on the battlefield. These stories added layers of fear as well as awe, cementing the sword's place as one of the most mysterious and cursed artifacts in Templar history. And now, centuries later, the sword still holds secrets yet to be unraveled. There is a strange silence that envelops the fortress every time the sword is taken out of its place. It is as if the entire air becomes heavier and denser, wrapping anyone nearby with an inexplicable sense of vigilance. The older guards often warn the younger generations never to look at the sword for too long. Because it is said, the sword can pierce the mind and see directly into a person's soul. They believe the dark power contained within the sword is not just a myth, but a dangerous reality for anyone careless enough. The sword never reflects its holder's face, perhaps because it is not just an object, but a living entity with its own consciousness. The empty shadow on its surface is a mirror of the emptiness within those who come too close to the sword. Some say the sword absorbs and swallows the owner's identity, leaving behind a void that can never be filled again. In that silence, the sword is like a gateway to another world full of secrets and darkness never revealed. Nights at the fortress are filled with stories told slowly behind curtains, with voices barely whispering. Tales of knights who turned into shadows, vanished without a trace, or became part of dark stories never openly told. Yet, no one truly knows what really happened. These are merely fragments of tales left in the shadows, inviting curiosity as well as fear. This sword, with all its mystery, remains a symbol of something far greater than mere power or war. It becomes an emblem of the struggle between light and darkness, between humans and forces that can never be fully understood. In the quiet of night, when the world sleeps and shadows grow longer, the sword continues to gleam with a light that reflects nothing but secrets untold, waiting for the right time to tell its story again. As the morning begins to slip through the cracks of the cracked stone windows, the sword is returned to its hidden place. The gentle sunlight gradually erases the dark shadows that envelop the basement, turning it into a quiet and almost sacred room. However, the seemingly peaceful silence is just a thin layer covering the tension that still lingers. Like a secret not yet ready to be revealed, the sword remains silent, holding all the stories and energies that have traveled a long journey through time. The guards entrusted with the duty of protecting this sword. No, they are not just guardians of an object, but keepers of a legacy full of mystery and danger. They understand that the sword is not only a symbol of physical power, but also a reminder of the dark side of humanity, always lurking behind the gleam of silver and steel. Within every curve of its blade lie stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and insatiable desire. In the nights to come, those whispers will return, bringing new stories and signs hard to interpret. Yet, for anyone brave enough to listen, the sword offers lessons in patience, caution, and respect for unseen powers. It teaches that not all that glitters should be possessed, and not all secrets must be uncovered. In that silence and calm, the sword remains a silent witness to a bygone era. and its faithful guardians continue to protect an invaluable legacy. As the night deepens and the world drifts into sleep, the story of the Templar sword lives on in the shadows, inviting anyone who hears it to be drawn into an endless mystery, a dark tale that lulls to sleep with profound silence. As the world falls asleep in the darkness of night, the sword lies in silence, full of secrets. It stands as a silent witness to the passage of time, holding stories never revealed and mysteries never solved. Like a dark fairy tale whispering softly in the ear, the sword invites us to reflect, letting our minds wander through corridors of history filled with shadows and riddles. Behind its cold, gleaming blade lies a profound silence, an empty space that can only be filled with subtle curiosity and fear. The sword teaches us that there is a boundary between the known and the hidden, between reality and legend, between light and darkness. In its silent journey, it takes us along the edges of the unseen world, reminding us that not all secrets need to be uncovered for peace to remain. And as our eyes begin to close, lulled by a calm and mysterious narrative, the sword continues to gleam in the darkness, guarding untold stories, waiting for the right moment to unveil the curtain of long-hidden secrets once more. In the stillness of night, let ourselves drift into the shadows of this Templar sword, a quiet journey whispering that some mysteries are part of the world's beauty we can never fully understand,